The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode. And now, here's Brandon.
Welcome back to Old Space Show. I'm Brandon, and as always with me is my companion, Steven.
Greetings.
This series of Old Space Show follows the intergalactic swashbuckling escape antics of Roche Blake and his ruffian crew in the first season of Blake's 7. Today, we're discussing the 7th episode, Mission to Destiny.
In this episode, Kendall, the captain of a spaceship whose crew member has been murdered, offers Blake the location to Destiny if he helps him find the killer on board the ship.
All right, this one is again directed by Pennant Roberts. And as always, it says Terry Nation wrote it. And our cast, Gareth Thomas, Sally Nivette, Paul Darrow, Jan Chappell, Michael Keating, David Jackson, Peter Tuddenham, Barry Jackson, Beth Morris, Stephen Tate, Nigel Humphreys, and John Leeson.
John Leeson. Yep. This is a fabulous episode for Doctor Who actor spotting, let me tell you.
There we go. Name them off, Stephen.
Well, we've got Barry Jackson, who, ironically enough, as I was watching this, and they had like the intro where the pilot gets killed, and then it sort of fades to black, and I was half expecting the Midsummer Murders theme to start up. Which features in the first few seasons Barry Jackson as the coroner, George Bullard. So Barry Jackson, but he's been in several Doctor Who episodes, most famously as Drax in around the same time in the Armageddon Factor. We had Nigel Humphreys played Bulick in Warriors of the Deep. Cara Forgione played was in 2 different roles in Doctor Who in Planet of the Spiders and Ghostlight. Yes, I am doing this off the top of my head.
I love it.
Stuart Fell, barely seen as the dead Dortmund, has been a stuntman in many Doctor Who episodes. And then, of course, you say John Leeson, who we saw on screen in The Power of Kroll around the same time as well. But he's, of course, most famous for the voice of K9.
Yes. You know, it's funny, when I was going through like Space 1999, I always would go through the cast list, and I would, and other sci-fi things, talk about looking for, the Doctor Who people connections. This show, I don't have to do that. I just go, Steven.
Who's it?
There's ones I recognize, and then but Steven will get them all right off the bat, and I love it. I love the Who connection. This episode, Steven, is the old Agatha Christie in space episode,
right? It's
you have to do them, right?
Well, I suppose you do. They did them right. I quite liked it. I mean, this is only my third watch through Blake 7. Let's face it, because I'm doing a podcast on it, and I feel like I should probably remember things about it. It's the first one that I'm really properly paying attention to. Mm-hmm. I rather enjoyed this one. I really rather enjoyed the whodunit aspect of it. I love that Paul Darrow basically gets to be Hercule Poirot. Like you're probably wondering,
right?
Why I called. I
had that in my notes
in the room together as he sort of goes through it. I thought he was just fabulous. It sets a precedent. Spoiler alert: where we record like 3 episodes at a time, and I'm thinking, didn't like every single one of these episodes essentially have "Let's beam down. I'll go over here now." Make sure to meet us at this exact time so we can beam you back. Oh, you've encountered a difficulty, and now we're stuck on this thing. That seems to be like a thing, and that's kind of what happened.
Everybody got their turn to beam down, too, I noticed. Because next week we'll have a group that isn't this group, and the other people get to hang out and do boring stuff on the ship that looks important.
I know. Like, it's funny how like Villa has sort of been sidelined, and
Gan does nothing.
Gan does nothing in this episode. Absolutely nothing. It's all it's basically Callie, Blake, and Avon, and sometimes Jenna.
Not even a lot of Blake. Like, he's just there to set up. He's like, all right, everybody. He's the dad dropping off. He's like, all right, or these people are gonna be your counselors for the week or something.
Yep. Yep. And I'll just take the stuff and go off back to the home planet and drop it off, and FedEx it over there, and I'll be back. And yeah, it's already I find they're sort of having to come up with interesting ways to split the crew up for story purposes, and then give each faction something to do. And this one's weird because it's a murder mystery, so it's really riding on the guest cast a lot more than a normal show would be.
Yeah, and how would you feel? Like, I'm the main cast member, and like, here I am just sitting in a chair, spouting lines for between scene stuff. I might get cut, who knows? But let our guest cast take all the stuff and chop it. Like Villa, he's kind of sidelined for a lot of episodes. Now that I think of it, so far he'll get some action later in our block here that we record. But this one is Callie and Avon, and I'd say like, oh look, a unintentional foreshadow of what would be later in the series, rather than because of the turn it takes after season 2.
Right. Yes.
Like, can these two people lead a show?
It does feel like it, and yes, it did. Yes, they can actually. This is actually really quite good. You basically have a 1 and 1A when it comes to lead. I really wonder how quickly, because I know the ratings are good for the show right from the get-go, and I'm wondering how people viewed it in the public. Were they like, yay Blake and the rest of the team, or wow, we really like Avon? Like, how quickly did Avon become the star of this show? I'm really curious of what the public opinion was at the time.
Yeah, it's true. There's no real. I mean, this isn't a show with like a lot to dig up and find too. Like, we'd need a Richard Bignell type person to give us that type of information, because it's. I mean, this is a very cult show, and in a time we live in where cult properties kind of wishy-washy because we have access to so much stuff now so easily. I feel Blake 7 still remains a cult property. Where a lot of things, I think, have risen above their cult status.
Yeah, like Doctor Who is so widely available on both sides of the Atlantic, both in DVDs and print, but also like just books. There's been so many books written about Doctor Who, and continue to be written about Doctor Who, that this sort of thing is easier to sort of get a glimpse of what the public opinion was at the time. Blake 7 less so, which is kind of fascinating, because it looks like Doctor Who, it sounds like Doctor Who, but much less about it for some odd reason, because there just isn't the larger fan circles that have sort of risen up and done podcasts about it, or written like Blake 7 magazine or anything like that. So finding out information about the show, which is what I'm always interested. I like the show as well, but I love knowing how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
Finding that sort of thing out is a lot more difficult.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that, because my daughter, when I was watching one of these episodes, came in and sat down, and she was doing something while I was watching it, and she said, "Oh, is this Doctor Who?" And I was like, "No." She's like, "What is it?" I was like, "Well, Blake 7." I was like, "It's very much has a lot of people involved in Doctor Who, and
from the producers of Doctor Who." Blake
and she goes,
7.
"Yeah, I can tell." I was like, "All right, well, yeah." I mean, if you walked by a Blake 7, you might be thinking you're watching like the prologue of a Doctor Who serial, like that's it's very much. I mean, there's no bones about it. Like, but that's the fun. That's part of why we love it too.
It is.
This murder mystery. We were in a series of episodes where it was like, well, is this what it's going to be? Like, just stopping places once a week, and this is the good version of that.
Yes, this isn't the web. This is actually a well-written script with interesting characters, and none of them are dressed up as weird screaming alien guys, which is odd in the web. Still thinking about that. Still can't get that one out of my head.
Yeah.
This one, and you know, it's well directed. It's well acted. It looks great. It's a mystery. I didn't necessarily. The one thing I didn't catch this time, which I thought was really rather clever, is when the sort of the board, the little notepad that Rafford scrawls that what everyone assumes is a number onto this thing. It sits there right next to Callie. And the camera sort of pans down, and she goes, "Oh, it's probably somewhere right in front of us, and we cannot see it." And it cuts away. Like they didn't do like some surreptitious like sort of push into the prop. It's in the background, semi out of focus, but it's there the whole time. I thought that was quite subtle. That's
indeed. Great.
You know, if it was a film series, I bet they probably would have like, we got to put a cutaway then, because you know you can do that. But it's a multicam situation. They wouldn't want to waste a camera at the very end of the scene just to get this one close up of the thing, and plus it would just sort of ruin it and everything.
Right.
So the fact that they didn't sort of like stoop to having that linchpin, that MacGuffin there being shown on screen so obviously, I thought was some admirable restraint.
Yeah, well, this one does have a lot of tropes of the murder mystery stuff. It's confident in them and doesn't, it's not hokey or whatever with it. It's just, it knows what it's doing. Like there's the classic, the scene where I can't forget the character's name. He's in the green and with the beard, or he's got the point of view shot. He's like, "Oh, it's you." Or,
Mandrian.
I knew you.
Mandrian,
Yes,
yeah.
Mandrian. I knew you'd be here. And addressing the camera as if it's a person. Like there's that classic thing. There's a lot of attitudes, suspicions, people going missing. Like there's the missing person that is a suspect because they just disappeared. Where are they? Because there's the person we see killed at the beginning that they all know died, and then there's someone else that's been missing. Like where did he go? And there's a rocket that's been ejected. And they're like, what's going on? And
And eventually Avon susses it out in very, very classic Poirot style.
Oh yeah, his Poirot stuff is great. That whole thing towards the end. I saw him with a dagger in his hand, but you didn't see him use it. That kind of keys in where he starts his thing. Definitely like it. And I do think back to this being a one-off, but this one being a one-off where I could see the potential of its value in the mission with Blake and them, because this is a group of people on this ship from a planet called Destiny. This really is a mission to Destiny.
It's a Terry Nation script when he names it Planet Destiny, because he always names the planets after what needs to happen when they get there, basically. Like a Desperus is a desperate escape from in the Daleks Master Plan in Doctor Who. There's Iridius because it's arid, all sorts of things like that. So Destiny, a little so that the destiny of our race is to get back there. The destination essentially is where we need to get to.
And Boucher's like, sure, you can put your name on this, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But these people aren't members of the Federation, and you can see the opportunity for Blake to go out of his way to help, to have allies to build his resistance across the universe with these people should this work out. So I feel like there's added value to it as a ongoing narrative, even though it is a one-off, not a mythology episode. But there is like, this is what they do. They try to befriend, they help people, and they build more to the cause. This is why people follow Raj Blake, and this kind of stuff he gets into to I don't know, recruit, rush week, I don't know, build stuff. But yeah, so I can kind of see the value in this as opposed to the web, where it's just like, they're the monster. We're done. Okay, bye.
We're still thinking about the web.
It's gonna be season 4 where we'll be like, remember the web?
Remember the web? Well, there's an episode of season 4 which might be worse than the web, but that's a long ways away.
That's a bit of a ways away. There was since we both like the technical side of things, there's a weird shift between film and video in this for reasons I couldn't understand.
I was going to actually mention that. It's fascinating in this season mostly. And remember how I mentioned earlier how Blake Seven basically inherited the production schedule of
a cop show, right?
Or
a precinct.
Yeah, Ted Carson, Dixon, and Doc Green. That's what it was. And I mean, there's reasons to shoot on film. There's technical reasons. If you're going to use fire or water, it would be difficult in an electronic studio with cameras around.
Later in life, a Blu-ray release, yes.
Yeah, and there would be BBC safety protocols that would just sort of prevent that. Other times, it's, in the 60s or something, this actor was on vacation, so we had to pre-film all their stuff. Third, hey, we want to actually make it look like an outdoor set or something like that, like in Doctor Who, like the Face of Evil or the Planet of Evil.
Planet of yes.
Especially.
Evil, yeah.
What I can tell in this one, because they remember in episode 2, Spacefall, they had it, but there was also a big fight scene in there, so you could maybe they're doing it so they could better concoct a fight scene. There are no real fight scenes in any of the scenes set on film. It might just literally be we didn't have enough room in the studio for all the sets, so we had to go pre-film one, because that has also happened. Also, maybe they had an allotment of film time, like film budget to use, perhaps, and they couldn't, either they couldn't fit the set in the studio, or they needed to actually have an extra day in the studio, and thus they had to do it on film. Because if they they usually probably shot one of these in maybe 3 or 4 days, I think it'd be. I'm just thinking because Doctor Who, they would shoot a 4-part story. If it was all studio, it would be 6 days in 2 blocks most usually. I think these are just one block, so probably 3 days. And I bet you maybe, since it was all in studio and they were a lot of sets, maybe they actually had to maybe they could only do 2 days and had to do one film. I don't know. This Brandon is why I wish we had
right.
Blake Seven Confidential or fanzines or something at the time to sort of break this stuff down, because I'm guessing that's the reason for it. Nothing technical or dramatic reasons or anything like that. I think purely because of logistics, they shoot a bunch of
Enjoy our theorizing, and somebody's going to write it down, put it on the internet, and someone's going to read it and put it on their piece of the internet, and it becomes fact, and it originates here for Brandon and Steven going, I don't know, maybe. Because I noticed there was a corridor that Callie would go down and back, and that was on film, and I was like, oh, maybe it's these corridors, and then she'd go in a room, and it was film again. I was like, well, never mind.
Yeah, there was that one. There is the one scene that you mentioned earlier where Mandarin sort of turns to the camera. Oh, of course you'd be here, and that would be difficult to hide the identity, perhaps in a videotape scenario. But I don't think that's worth setting up a whole series of shots for that 1 or 2 sets on film just to have that one shot. So my guess is purely for logistics, they couldn't either fit it in the studio that they were shooting at, or B, didn't have the time to shoot that scene in the studio, and so thus had to go on film.
Gotcha, yeah. Fascinating stuff. If you're still listening, I love talking about that stuff. I hope my listeners enjoy it too, because I just go with what I like. So, it catches your attention, because this one's a really odd. I mean, if you're used to watching the British television shows, this one's kind of like a really odd mixture of trying to figure out why. But this one, I like it too. But I was sitting here trying to take notes and stuff. It's not super detailed in terms of, I don't know, a lot of discussion. We've had plenty of discussion topics, but it's a lot of scenes of people fixing things or snooping around. That's a lot of the episode. I noticed, because there's Avon's fixing something, John Leeson's fixing something, the people on the Liberator are sitting looking bored as they travel.
Right.
And and there's not a lot of big conversations to go around. It's just kind of, you sit, observe, and enjoy the mystery, I think, is
yeah.
More about
and that's what I did this time around.
Yeah.
I just I'm just sitting it down. I remember who gets it's Sarah, who is sort of very conveniently sort of ignored for large chunks of it, as if to sort of make sure that she doesn't seem as guilty as, say, Sondheim does or something like that.
Yes.
But yeah, it was an enjoyable little murder mystery.
Right.
Something I wasn't necessarily expecting from Blake Seven so early in the run. Like, especially after Seek, Locate, Destroy, which is, as we discussed, is kind of like the template for like the beginning of Blake Seven. Let's face it.
Right.
There's Servalan, the Federation, Travis, like everything is there that is basically the icons of Blake Seven. And the very next week, it's like, nope. Murder mystery in space.
I think they're just not. Well, they probably have these scripts commissioned. Like I could see it where it's like, oh, they're not sure if that's gonna work, and then the episode works, and then they bring them all back later. But they're back next week, so it had to been known. But yeah, it's weird to take this 1 week off. Maybe in the writing stage, they're like, all right, we got those people. Go figure out something to do with them. You'll have extra time. We're going to write this script here, too. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Well, Terry's just cranking them out himself.
Yeah.
But
you know what? I didn't recognize much of Chris Boucher's polish on this one as I did maybe in earlier episodes. So this feels like very much a Terry Nation solo special in my mind.
Very true. So yeah, Blake foils his plan by at the resolve of this by killing everybody involved. The people who were meeting up, and Sarah basically condemns herself because she throws the bracelet off, which deserves it. Okay,
yeah, wasn't that clear? But I just like, oh no, I'm going to sit here and die instead, and just sort of okay. And then they cut back, and everyone's just sitting around. Everyone's very comfy on the couches, just sort of turn around, looking at the screen. It just was kind of amusing.
Well, it's just this potential buyer. We don't know who it is. It could be some kid off eBay. Like, I can't believe I found one. I'm going to be able to save our planet.
Yep, and then it blows up, and it's okay, and then cut to Villa with a joke at the end of it. Oh, surely can we take the long way around next time? Wop 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 wop. Oh, and scene.
They did give Gan something to do. He handed out drinks.
Poor Gan. Oh, so early on, and he already has
I noted that. I'm
do.
Like, Gan hands out drinks.
That's right. He did hand out drinks.
He did something. Something.
Man.
Oh, my. Oh, but Stephen, please set our course again for Earth. But before we give it to the Federation, please let people know your information.
I am on Twitter at Legopolis, and I'm also doing Doctor Who podcasts at Radio Free Scarl, Lazy Doctor Who, and The Memory Cheats.
All right. Hashtag Sondheim, not Sondheim. Just to make that clear. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Brand4KUHD. Written work at WhySoBlue.com. There's more from my show next week, as you'll get the commentary for 1965's Kiss Me Deadly, a film noir that was kind of against the grain for its time. It's a really fun commentary with myself, Scott Mendelson, Aaron Newworth, and Yancey Burns. But from old space...
If it takes all my life, I will destroy you, Blake. I'm not even into this episode, but I will destroy you. I will destroy you.
Thank you for listening. The Brandon Peters Show is a Creative Zombie Studios production. Produced by Brad Shoemaker and Brandon Peters. Written and edited by Brandon Peters. Announcer vocals by Jessica Alsman. Theme song by Metavari. Web design and show art by Brad Shoemaker with Brandon Peters. All music and clips featured in the episode are property of their respective studios, and no infringement is intended. Additional information on this and other episodes at BrandonPetersShow.com. For any inquiries, press opportunities, or sponsorship, contact mail at BrandonPetersShow.com. The show is available on Apple Music, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found.